Hey guys, we are back for another episode of the On Call Empath. And today I have a very special guest. I know I'm going to mess up the name, but I'm just going to try it anyways. Gurds. Is that close enough?
Close enough, that'll do.
Well, this is an honor for me to have you. I know you have a very big audience, a lot of female audience, but I wanted to come on and have you on a guest here to get a male's perspective and we can bounce off ideas. Um, this is about trauma, the on-call empath. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into everything, because I know you've been through quite a lot.
Gosh, well, so growing up in the UK, so I'm born to Indian parents. Both my parents are immigrants who came to the UK in like the early 60s.
Mhm,
But so I'm British born. And as you know, growing up, when you grow up in a new world or like a new
mhm.
country, there's always going to be confusion with your Western and your Eastern side.
Yeah.
But growing up, there was just so many conditionings that I had, like people pleasing, self sacrificing,
Mhm,
being a good Indian girl, and trying to appease everybody else except myself.
mhm,
And I dreamt from a young age I wanted to be a journalist. That was like
mhm,
my dream. I wanted to like share stories about health.
mhm,
And I went on this amazing journey of just going into the journalism world, studying it, and then working in a pharmacy, which is very strange. I worked in healthcare on the counter, and I used to dispense medications as well.
mhm,
Um, and I always had a lot of people tell me their life problems. I must have
mhm.
been about like the age of 8. Everybody, even adults, young people, just come to me with their problems, and I used to just think, "What am I doing?" And it would happen in the pharmacy as well. I'd hand over somebody's medication,
Mhm,
and somebody would say to me, like the pharmacist would say, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm doing nothing." They're like, "Well, why are they talking to you so much?" I'm like, "I just literally say hi," and they just
mhm.
vomit that whole life story to me.
Yeah.
And like growing up, that happened everywhere I went. Even in the journalism
Mhm,
world, people would just share their life problems with me on like my breaks and
mhm,
my lunches. But yeah, I studied 2 degrees in journalism. I moved out to Canada for a bit and worked at a news channel there. And
mhm,
again, people sharing their problems. I had a lot of
mhm.
health problems growing up. It's quite hard to put it all to say it all quite easily, but like I had
Yeah.
eating disorders, I had depression. In Canada, my left arm stopped working,
Mhm.
and that was just the pressure of everybody else's
Yeah.
trauma and issues, and me just not dealing with my own
Mhm,
pain. So it got till about age 25 when I was in the
mhm,
city. I was working as a journalist, but then also as a publisher. I was just wanting a bit of extra money.
mhm.
And I was not happy in that job. Again, pushing and striving to be successful, and I
Sure.
collapsed. And I remember that day where, again, everybody in the office would tell me their problems. But the
Yeah.
moment I collapsed on the floor and the ambulance came to take me, check me out, nobody came to help me. They said they're too busy with work. And I
Isn't that
remember,
crazy?
right, like what world are we in, right? Like,
I
and I
can
felt,
contest to that.
yeah, like I felt so hurt, Raj, at that moment. And I
Yeah.
remember that night I walked home from the hospital and I said to myself, I don't want this life like this anymore. I want to.
Yeah.
What happened to this happy Gurds who was really young
Yeah.
and silly and free? Where
Yeah.
has she gone? And I'd vowed to myself that I was going to leave that job in a few
Mhm.
months, but as the universe works,
Yeah.
I was made redundant, and it just set me free. But then,
Yeah.
as that set me free, about 2 months into that, I was just turning 25. Then I had a cancer scare, and that was the moment, and that was like that changed everything for me
Yeah.
because up until that point, I was pushing hard. At this point, I was an alpha female. I was
Huh.
hiding my emotions because, as you know, being an empath, we're told to toughen
Yeah.
up. So I had this persona of being this tough cookie.
Mhm.
And when the doctor said to me, "You don't have cancer," I literally cried and said thank you. And I ran out of the
Mhm.
hospital and I heard it's time to heal. And literally, I went on this journey. I don't even know how to even describe. Started doing the inner
Mhm.
work, had my own radio show, had a podcast, was teaching young people how to produce films. I was just doing everything that brought me
Yeah.
joy. And
Yeah.
the more I did that, the more I just found myself. And then
Yeah.
I was always helping. I was
Yeah.
always helping some people. And I just remember seeing a leaflet and it said life coach. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm already doing this anyway. And that's kind of what led me onto this whole
Yeah.
journey of empowering empaths
Yeah.
and
I hear this so much, especially with empaths. They go through um, I don't want to say a test, but they go through some hellish stuff, like just like
Mm.
you're describing, and then you get to a point where, if you want to call it a breakdown, or that moment where you just can't take anymore, and then the shift happens. And I've been talking to so many guests about this shift, where there's that moment where they went through so much in life, whether it's a health scare or abuse, trauma, and they get to a point and it's like they it was almost like all that was not for anything. You actually came out on the other side, and now you're helping people, and you're just kind of turning things around. And you had to go through all that pain and suffering to be the awesome person you are today. and
Oh.
and so, yeah, that's the theme that I get. And with people pleasing and everything that you're saying, of everyone coming to you, it's an energy that I think we get from childhood. And that's why I want to kind of focus on, and brought you on to this episode, because I know you have a huge female audience. I also have like males and females. So I want to bounce off some ideas off of you, and just kind of get your take on things. When it comes to people pleasing and all these people coming to you for help, and then when you needed it, they were just basically, I mean, crickets. They weren't around you.
Yeah.
I've experienced that. Unfortunately, I've talked to many people that have, and it's very common among empaths.
Mm.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think, people pleasing? Why do we people please so much, especially in our culture?
Oh gosh.
It's a
Well,
loaded question.
yeah. Well, I could just speaking from experience, being within our Indian culture, right? Like, I know we're from different like backgrounds, but it's still that Indian culture, right?
Sure.
So I don't know. I can speak more from a woman's perspective. So, from a woman's perspective, within our community, women have always been shut down.
Hmm.
They've always told to follow the rules. They're always told to listen to their elders, and men know everything.
Hmm.
Whenever a woman speaks up, they're seen as this bad woman, like
Hmm.
she's like the villain of the story. And I think a lot of us as girls, I don't know, with guys it's slightly different again, but with girls it's like we want to make mummy and daddy happy. We want to
Hmm.
make the community happy, but
Yeah.
we don't even know we're doing it because we've been almost like spoon fed certain things from a young age.
Yeah.
So they'll say, don't do this or don't do that when you go to so and so's house. Act good, be kind, smile.
Hmm.
Even though you're in pain, just smile and pretend like
Yeah.
everything is okay. And the same with guys. It's the same like mindset where um, you have to look good in front of the community, have this great car
Yeah.
and this great house and show
And
you're
go to the
amazing.
best schools, and so you can talk to people at parties and say, "Hey, my kid's going to Harvard. Where's yours going?" And it's almost like they're living through their kids. They're it's like they're putting the kids on a pedestal. And I'm sure they love them. I'm sure they love
Mm.
their kids, but it gets to a point where, I mean, I've told this story before. I have a friend. He committed suicide when I was in high school, and his
Gosh.
parents basically told him if he doesn't get into like medical school. And I remember he didn't tell me like all that was going on in his house, but I knew that his
Wow.
parents were very, um, that if he came home with anything less than a certain grade, they would threaten him, saying, we're going to send you back, and this and that.
Wow.
And he hung himself in the garage. And the sad part is, I swear to you, I saw the dad like 2 weeks ago walking by himself in the neighborhood. I was driving past. I can guarantee that that was him, because I remember his face. He's a lot
Mm.
older now, and he was walking
Yeah.
alone. And I'm like, you know, I'm not going to be the one to, say, hey, what happened? Because I know what
Yeah.
happened, but we're supposed to be like this about it in the
Shush.
culture. And the minute we
Yeah.
say anything, we have mental problems. The minute we have these
Mm.
discussions like you and I are having right now, we're spoiled kids. We don't know what we're talking about, and that's
Yeah.
that's like a mechanism that they use to keep
Or
us shut.
I was just going to say, or they say that you haven't had it harder than us.
Yeah,
It's always about how they feel. It's never
yeah,
about how we feel. It's almost like because they left that world from back home, they think
yeah.
it's not hard for us here. they forget that they put 10 times more pressure on us because they
Yeah.
didn't have that lifestyle that we had. So,
Yeah, you have it
it,
so well. You know,
yeah,
you have a car, you have an opportunity, and the fact of the matter, you do. But like going through the school system is, for a lot of people, it's hell. Some people don't
yeah.
make it out because they're different.
Mm,
They get abused at home, and then they go to school and they get made fun of and bullied. And guess what happens when that person grows up? A
yeah.
lot of issues.
I can relate with that because I had really long hair growing up, so I didn't cut my hair till I was probably about 14, and I was made fun of because I had this greasy long plait and I
Hmm.
had big eyebrows, and it's hard enough just trying to fit in, and especially when you go to just majority white schools and you're the
Hmm.
only few brown people or ethnic people, you kind of are seen as like weird.
Yeah,
You're
you're like
treated like,
the last person to be picked on everything. But in
yeah,
school, like most of them are number one in all the academic stuff. But then everything else, I mean, things are changing obviously. But when I was
yeah.
going to school, it was like I was like the only oddball out. And that's something
Mm,
that's what developed me into who I am today. So I'm kind of glad that happened because I can adapt and I understand why, how to treat myself good and love myself and know my boundaries and, people pleasing stuff like that. But back then, no one's going to teach you that.
I just think even the people around us don't even know how to teach it because they don't even know self love. They don't even know
Mm-mm.
boundaries themselves. There is no boundary in our households, right? Like
You're
as
not
Indian
supposed to.
families.
You're only
Yeah.
supposed to obey, and you're basically looked upon as property. I brought you in, and I can take you out type of attitude. Now, I'm not saying
Mm,
every case. There are a lot of great, phenomenal,
yeah.
families that I've come across where they don't do that. But I could say that the majority of the ones that I've coached and the people that I've talked to, a lot of my friends, there seems to be a theme going on, and that's why I wanted to bring you on because I feel like people need to know about this because I remember like going to a therapist in the US that
Mm.
they don't understand. They're
They don't
like, "Well,
understand
why
us,
don't you
right?
just have a family meeting or why don't you just have a one-on-one?" And I can't tell them that's not how
Mm,
it works. Our dynamic is
yeah.
different. So I wanted to ask you, what are some toxic cultural norms? And did you ever go to a therapist or someone to talk about this? And what was their reaction to it? Were they able to be helpful?
So what I was going to say is that a lot of my clients are people of color, and a lot of them say they cannot relate with their therapist or their coaches because they don't understand the immigrant
Yeah,
trauma, right? So they don't understand what their parents went through. Then they don't
right.
understand the first generation trauma and
Exactly.
the expectations and how we're supposed to behave and act. They're just like go, like you said, just go and have a chat with them. It's
Hmm.
not that simple. With me, I actually did the inner work myself in the beginning. So when I ran out of the hospital, I actually wrote 30 pages of my life and saw patterns straight away.
Hmm.
I've always been a bit of they call it a generational pattern shifter. But years later, I did actually seek help when there were certain things happening in my life.
Hmm.
But I always noticed that whoever I spoke to, they didn't understand the Indian like
Hmm.
culture. So they'd be like, oh, well, you should do this or do that. I'm like, it
Hmm.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not to just aim at the Indian culture. I think even I have a lot of Asian friends as well,
Yeah.
and they've had it worse. I've had people on this podcast where they would get beaten because they wouldn't, comply with the parents. They would like literally get beaten for not having the grades. So there's been extreme cases, and
Wow.
I mean, it kind of goes upon not just South Asians but Asians and other cultures. I know that I've had Italian, a lady from Italy. She said it's kind of similar. So it
Mm,
just seems there's a
yeah.
there's a trend, and you don't find that too much in the American culture. I haven't found that. It's more like you're 18, you're an adult, and now you go out get a job, or
Yeah. It's
you.
well, you see. Sorry, gone.
No, I mean that's what most of the people tell me. They're like, okay, after you become 18, you go and work on your career, you go to college, whatever. But at least with the Indian culture, I mean, with men, you have to kind of take care of your family, look after them, or you live with your wife
Yeah.
in the family circle. But I mean, obviously that's changing. There's a lot of people that just go out and make their own lives, have their own families and they never talk to the parents. But a lot of the stuff that I've come across is like they all live in one house and they're living with the wife
Mm.
and they have their kids and the grandparents, and it's kind of good to all be in one house. But then at the same time, it's like, in the American culture, I don't think that would be widely accepted.
Yeah, I think it depends on the family because there's obviously some families there isn't that much trauma. It all
Hmm.
depends on the trauma of the family, right? I've actually had even like black clients as well who've said same things as like they don't feel like they're being heard or they've been undermined
Hmm.
by their therapists or coaches because or they've sometimes even used even for our people as well like we're being aggressive and it's like
Hmm.
no we're not being aggressive we share our emotions it's just
Right.
how I'm feeling, right? Um, but yeah, oh gosh, I've forgotten the question what you were saying. um, oh yeah, so like within Indian households, like in the UK, there are changes happening. So people are buying their own homes and having
Sure.
separate from their families. But there's people like me who moved out when I started like traveling when I was about 19, but I moved out properly when I was
Hmm.
21. Even still to this day, my parents get asked it's ridiculous. So your daughter lives out? Yes. She's not married? No. She's in her 30s? Or she's overstepped the mark. And you think, who are you? Like, you're some random stranger from
Yeah.
the temple asking about my life. I haven't seen you in
Right.
10 years. But they feel guilty and obliged that they have to answer their questions. And it's like, we're in modern times. A girl
Right.
can live out before marriage. A girl can stand on her
S-
own 2 feet.
Right.
But if she
So
does, she's
yeah.
bad. You don't bring her to home because she will create problems in the
Right.
family or she's too independent
Right.
and there's no control of her. And I think that's why there's that dynamics of
Yeah.
living together is they
Right.
want to control the
Yeah.
unit and
They
have it
do.
their way.
And what you're saying, it happens to men as well. They're like, so what are you doing? Where'd you go to school? And I'll spit right back. I'm like, how's your wife? What does she do? And how long has she been, in that company? Oh, how's your,
Mm,
kid? And so when I start pushing like that, they're like, that's, they kind of give me like a look like, no, I'm the one that's asking the questions. And then when I don't budge, and I'm like, you're gonna try to ask me about my personal life of who I'm getting, dating, or where I'm living and what school I went to, and whatever your motive is, that's your thing, but it's not appropriate. I don't care who. I don't know you. Why are you going to be asking
yeah.
me all these personal questions, which I don't feel like discussing with you? You're not a counselor. You're not my academic counselor. You're not paying my bills. I mean, I could just tell them like, look, I'm homeless. You know, are
Mm.
you not going to talk to me now? Because so it's just. It goes around even no matter where you are in the world. Like you just proved it. Like it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, and it's so silly because like times have moved forward, and you think we are our people like everyone is like more educated than before. So
Hmm.
you'd think that these kind of things would just slowly disappear, but no, they're so prevalent. So like even
Yeah.
when I was at university, because I'm quite strong-headed and I know my culture, but I might not look like I know my culture.
Hmm.
It's quite funny because like I would sing on stage at the temple and things like that, right? So I'd get a lot of these like guys who lived at home who would then start saying, "You're the type of woman that would wear the trousers in the house," and you're like, "Excuse me, I don't even know you. Like, you don't even know what I'm like in a family."
Yeah.
But automatically, they're trying to find a problem with
Yeah.
me because they feel insecure in themselves.
Yeah.
But again, and it took me a while. Like, I used to get upset about it when I was like 21,
Mhm.
but then I realized in their household, probably the dad is controlling the mum, and the mum
Yes.
doesn't have the right to say, and
Right.
they're looking for somebody to control. And
Right.
they like me because I'm different, but they want to control, right?
Yeah.
So there's this deep pattern of
Yeah.
this manipulation of wanting to control women. Not all men, I can
Yeah.
say vouch, not all Indian men are like that, but there are a lot of guys who doesn't matter how educated you are as a woman, as an Indian woman in modern times, they
Yeah.
still want to
Control you.
bring you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, to make themselves feel
It's,
better.
I when I was in, I think, high school, like I did some crazy stuff. Cut my hair really short and I put earrings on, and God forbid that was like that
Whole.
that was like helicopters over my house. Like they did not approve. And so what that did was that caused me to even go harder. Like I started doing
Mm.
hanging around the wrong crowd, and then, you know, in college, I totally disregarded everything. I did everything opposite. And
Mm.
um, and a lot of people, they'll come up to me, they're like, you don't typically do what
Yeah.
Indians do. And what is that supposed to mean? When I
Yeah.
go out to sign my name somewhere, people will be like, okay, Raj, and then how do you spell your last name? And they're ready for this long name, and I'll tell them what my last name is, and then they'll be like, "Oh, that's it? That we're waiting for more." So there's a lot of assumptions. Maybe they think I'm a doctor or in IT, or I own a 7-Eleven or a hotel, whatever the whole, the Simpsons type of, you know, Apu. When I don't fit that mold, and they see like, wow, this guy's tatted up. He's half of his body's tatted.
Mm.
He eats meat, and he plays rock music. Like, that is not the typical IT person. And so I think when they see that, it's kind of like, okay, this guy, he's straight away. He's not one of us.
Mm.
better look at him. Don't be like him, like, type of thing. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
same.
and I'll be like, rah, just kind of scare the little kid off. I'm like, yeah, don't be like me. But you know what? I'm happy being who I
Yeah.
am, and I'm not going to let any culture or person define who I am. If you don't like me, that's your
Yeah.
problem.
I just think at the end of the day, we were born to be ourselves for a reason. There's a whole
Hmm.
reason why we're individuals. God didn't say to the universe or higher power, whatever you want to call it, didn't
Hmm.
say you must follow this trend and you must behave like this. Then we're just all robots. There's a reason why we have our quirks, our
Hmm.
creativity. And I don't understand where this culture came from where we needed to follow those rules.
Hmm.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
But what that does is actually causes more depression and anxiety within people within our community. A lot of them are living two lives because they
Hmm.
don't know how to show the real side to their parents. So they're putting
Right.
on a front, and behind the scenes are doing completely the opposite. But
Yeah.
then what they
Contradicting.
mess right, they're messing themselves up, and then they're having like midlife crisis or quarter
Hmm.
life crisis, or drinking excessively, or taking
Hmm.
drugs, or numbing their pain, but not
Right.
realizing it's all because they're not being true to themselves. And I think
Hmm.
that's where like yourself and I and many other empaths got to, where we were just lost.
Hmm.
We wanted to be ourselves, but we were afraid to be ourselves because we were
Right.
told if we're vulnerable, then people are not going to like it, or if we're too sensitive,
Hmm.
this is going to happen to us, or the world's going to
Hmm.
eat us up. So
Hmm.
we put on a persona, but
Hmm.
really, what's the point of having a
Right.
persona? We only have this one life. Just be
Exactly.
true to
Be
yourself.
who you are. And um, so I wanted to kind of circle back. You mentioned something earlier when you got sick. Everyone kind of left you, and you were in the dark. And I think that's global for empaths. I think we give so much, and then when it's our turn, we're asking for help. They're not there. And especially with, our culture, and I know you're very familiar with this, is, people, they'll help you just for show, and then when it's time, they're nowhere around. In fact, a lot of the people that I grew up with, um, we went out, we did parties
Mm.
together, we played outside. But then once you grow up, it's like they went their separate ways, and they knew like something wasn't right. They saw stuff going on, but
Mm.
they just kind of looked the other way. So to me, you're guilty by association. You are part of the problem.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, all the childhood friends that you have, that you thought that you're good friends,
Yeah.
they're just now acquaintances now. And when you need help, they're not there for you, especially in a time of need. Now, I get it. They got their
Mm.
own families, they got their own jobs. I'm not saying like they have to check up on you, but like, when you don't hear them from them from years, and then all of a sudden they call you, hey, what's up? It's like, hey, I don't want to talk to you. Click.
Yeah. Well, you see, that happens to me a lot. So, like, I have
Cool.
my few close friends who we will be there for each other, and I've learned that over the years. It, have people around you where you're there for one another. It's not give and take, right?
Hmm.
So, before growing up, I always had so many friends, right? Friends, but really they weren't friends. They were people who just wanted to dump their stuff on me. And
Hmm.
back then, I was like, I need to save everybody. I need to save the world. Oh yes, I'm being good. I'll be nice and help them, right? And during this whole COVID situation, I've had like thousands of messages from people from my past contacting me. And straight away they're like, hey, like you said, what's up? And I'm like, yeah, everything all right? Or
Mhm.
any reason you're contacting? But for me, I've realized that because we're happy in our own skin as empaths, people want that light because
Yeah.
they're afraid of finding their own light.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just say, oh, I want that, instead of actually doing the inner work.
Mhm.
And so a lot of empaths are so happy and full of joy. But when we like are around somebody with heavy energy, or
Yeah.
somebody who has trauma, or somebody just vents at us without our permission, you'll notice our energy just goes down. We get
Mhm.
drained. Like for me, I used to collapse. I used to actually sometimes, like when somebody would overload me, my jaw would just like become really tight, and like
Physical. Yeah.
I couldn't speak. So Raj, like you'd have to literally put a teaspoon of sugar in my mouth, and I used to think, oh, there's something wrong with, like, maybe I've got lack of vitamin C or something. But over the years, I realized it was
Yeah.
other people's energy. And so when these people try to get back in contact with me, usually number one, I either ignore them because I know they're wanting, as empaths, we
Something.
can sense
Yeah.
user energy. B, they're unhappy in their own skin. And if I do hear them out, I will literally say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like, here's my
Right.
coaching services. However, you know me, I don't think it would be right. Or here's
Exactly.
some numbers to a therapist, or, speak to these people. Because at the end of the day, it's not my job to save everybody, and it's not your
Yeah.
job to save
I
anybody. And
I
there's
can
an
totally
expectation
understand.
on us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've had so many old friends of mine that want something like either coaching or, oh, I just got to pick your brain for a little bit. Well, okay, great. These this is my hourly rate. Oh, you're going to charge me now. Okay.
Yeah.
You've changed. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I'm going to put myself first. And if you think I'm an asshole for it, well, that's not my problem. So I got a lot of that. And then when I started to get in a groove where I kept saying, kept my boundaries tight, they would just go away. And it's so funny because the minute you
Mm.
say no and they disappear, you know that that person was pretty much full of shit.
Yeah. Well, like, it's the manipulation game, right? Because we were so caring that we gave all our time and energy away to others. And now we start saying no. Usually, those people were the manipulators.
Yeah,
Those were the people that knew how to take advantage of us and didn't
yeah,
really care. I've been in situations where, like, family members, so like once, like, gosh, years ago, my grandma passed away, and like other people, I was there through, like, when they went through like horrific
mhm,
things. But when it came to my like family members passing away, all of them on purpose chose to ignore me, and I remember that hurt.
yeah,
And their excuses was, oh, we just didn't want to upset
yeah,
you. And I'm like, no, you just, in my head, I'm like, you just didn't want to be there. Just
yeah,
let's face it. But you see, that's the thing with empaths. Like, as you heal your trauma, you heal the past, you start to realize who are your true circle. And
yeah,
you realize how many people, not just your friends, they're strangers. Like, I don't know with you, but I get strangers on the street wanting to tell me their life stories. I could be
mhm,
stood in the mall, or you
mhm,
know in the supermarket, just waiting to pay for my food, and somebody just tells me
mhm.
their whole problems. And I purposely now will say no, sorry, or I don't have time,
Yeah,
or I just don't even interact. The moment you
mhm.
give eye contact, that's it. They just
You're locked in. I had so many stories like that where people just start. I would say vomiting basically all these words on you, and before they even get started, you give that eye contact, and then they know, okay, this guy, I can push them a little further, and then you get to a point where they're just dumping everything, and then they call you every time, giving you that energy, even if it's over the phone. So I know a lot of my clients tell me the same thing, where they deal with family members, friends, and they just call and they just dump all their problems on them, and then you
mm,
are left drained. I've had even people just go on and on, and when I try to interject, they're like, "Hold on, let me finish," and then it just keeps going on. And when I get to that point,
wow,
not anymore. I've usually just blocked those people now, but like that's how I was before. I would feel
yeah,
guilty for cutting them off, and that's a trauma response. And the minute I started saying, I'm sorry, I gotta go. I have some work to do. They're like, yeah, just hear me out. And I'm like, I'm not going to hear you out. And then you don't hear from them again.
yeah.
They're going to go to the next person and try that stuff on them too. So that seems to be one of the toughest things for empaths, that
Yeah.
I hear from a lot of the people that I've come across.
It's because we want to save everybody. We want everyone to be happy,
Yeah.
but then we forget about our own happiness because we're so
Mhm.
busy focused on everybody else. And
Yeah.
I've had people call me up like, gosh, when I was younger, like their parents were like hitting them and they're like, come save me. And I'm like, I don't even know where you live. But like, then I would like try to find out where they were
Right.
living and, like, and then the next day I'll be at school. Oh yeah, I'm fine now. And I'm like, what? But, like you said, it's like this whole, we go through this cycle of just
Yeah.
thinking about everyone else. But what
Right.
we actually do is actually damage ourselves in the process. Like
Hmm.
I know that I got a lot of health problems because of other people's pains.
Yeah.
Even working in the pharmacy, as you can imagine, just standing there and people
Yeah.
already telling me their health problems and then
Yeah.
vomiting their life stories. I was absorbing
Yeah.
everything. Like I would finish, and that would be on the weekends. When I'd get home, I'd literally collapse. And my mum and dad were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I'm just so tired. I was
Yeah.
always tired. I was anemic for
Oh,
years. But actually, I wasn't anemic. I was energetically drained."
drained. Yeah. And that happens
Yeah.
to the best of us. I need my alone time. As an empath, I will shut off the world, shut off my phone, and I'll take, a moment to like recharge when I need to. And then when I'm ready, I'll go back out. Um, but just kind of getting back to everything that you're saying and tying it up. I mean, I know there are a lot of people out there that what really gets my blood boiling is they're like, you're not the victim when you get out of that victim mode. And I had a friend recently say that you're like, you're never going to heal unless you're out of that victim mode. And to me,
Mm.
what that really means is shut up. I don't want to hear you. I'm sick and tired of hearing you. And this is probably the best way to shut you up. Um, and that's why when I, like you talked about a few circle of friends, I only have like a couple, maybe two or three. Everybody else, I don't dare say anything personal or anything that I'm going through because they're going to be like, oh, just tough it up. You stop being the victim. When you stop being a victim, call me. And so
Mm.
those are the dangerous people. Those are the people that like they're out there. I mean, some of them are narcissists. Some of them are just, they have personality disorders. They will always want to dish it, but they never want to take it. And so when they give you, their problems, you're expected to listen. And then
Mm.
when it's your turn, it's like, I got no time. Sorry. At least for the people that I've come across over the years. And so I've gotten to the point where I can see them a mile away now. So I know that I can almost tell you what the person's behavior is going to be like just based on the way they are talking to me. And they're building up to something. Hey, you mind if I talk to you about something real quick? What do you want to sell me? It's not.
Mm.
I can just feel like the energy that if you were genuine, you would go another way. I mean, as empaths, I think that's just a gift that we have, and some people don't realize that. But you can use
Yeah.
that superpower to kind of weed out those toxic people. But so, just wrapping up here.
I was just gonna
Yeah,
say
go
it's
ahead.
interesting you said that because these people that turn up from my past, right? Just nowadays, I just go, "What do you want?" And they're like, "That's rude." I'm like, "Oh, really? Well, you clearly want something." But like
Hmm.
yourself, I sense it straight away. I see the message. I'm like, "Right, yeah, they want something. What do they want?" So I don't even entertain how are
Yeah.
you and all that. I just get to the point
Hmm.
if I can be bothered. But I was just going to say something that you said about
Hmm.
a bit earlier on about our culture and stuff. Like there's this whole culture mentality of like the elders know better and
Yeah.
if and we need to respect them. And it's like respect is earned.
Right. Not
And I
given.
think that's where our culture doesn't understand. Like you could be like an elderly person, but you could be like fucked in the head,
Yeah.
right? You could have messed up trauma, you could be bipolar, you could be all these different
Uh-huh.
things. But why should then somebody respect you, right? If you're treating other
Well,
people badly.
you're supposed to respect your elders, and no matter what age you are, you could be 50 years old, you're still going to be below them there. And people say there's not a caste system, but I say
Mm,
bullshit. I say there is
yeah,
a caste system based
yeah,
on how you look, your money that you
yeah.
make, what you drive. I mean, that's just the new age. Back there, the caste system
Mm.
was based on like skin color and what you look like, how light your skin is. But then here it doesn't matter because they just look at,
Mm, you
maybe
say
it's
that.
similar, but if you're
Mm.
driving like a really nice car, you've made it. You're showing it off to everybody. But I mean, I don't know what it's like over there.
You say that, right? But then you hear so and so saying something in the temple. Like I remember growing up, oh, so and so married so and so. Oh, he's a bit dark, or oh, she's
Yeah,
a bit fair, and straight away when she's fair, it's like, oh, she's like a goddess. or
Yeah.
he's a goddess or a god. But it's like, but the guy's educated. Why does that matter? It's this inherited
Right.
like colorism within
Yeah.
them that automatically makes them think that there's something wrong with somebody because their color is slightly got a bit more melanin in it. It's very strange.
It is, and that's a huge part of the culture. And hey, I'm saying it on my podcast that you can't judge people just by their melanin on their skin, because the people that are complaining about it are almost as dark as most, people from, let's say, Africa or something, and they're saying something negative towards somebody else. So it's like, look at yourself before you talk. It's like,
Yeah.
it's it's really bad. I think that you have to take someone's worth based on their skin color.
The thing is, I can relate to that because my skin color has changed. Like growing up, it was like it just changes. Like I was very
Mhm,
fair growing up, and then I got tanned, and then I've been different complexions, right, growing
mhm.
up. And I noticed when I was lighter skinned, just how it was. People treated me different. But the moment I got darker, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, people treated me differently in the temple, and I just remember feeling like, or they'll be like, "Oh, so and so's daughter is very pretty," and I'm like, "What's wrong with me then?" But so I've been on both end of the sticks, and
Yeah.
I know how messed up it is. And it sounds awful, but it doesn't matter how much education or how much money you have. At the end of the day, they still look at that. And I think that needs to it needs to break down because it's ridiculous.
Well, it's probably been going on for generations well before
Yeah.
us, and it's going to continue going on. But that's why, having conversations like this brings awareness. Of course, this is like not, this type of talk that we're doing would be considered we're two like messed up people. We weren't raised
Mm.
properly. That's why we're doing what we're rebelling. No, it's not. It's 2021.
Uh,
That shit ain't working. Not in this day
Speak
and
your
age.
truth.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
yourself, and so now just kind of wrapping up, I just want to give you the last word. Um, what are some tips that you can give somebody that's listening right now? They don't have to be like South Asian or Asian, but just in general, somebody that's going through like a hard time dealing with kind of like what you just described with their family dynamics, toxicity, and just trying to be authentic and be live in peace.
Yeah. I would say number one, look at the patterns in your family. Look at the patterns in your friendships and look at the patterns in even in your work circle. Who's causing you headache? Who's making you feel tired? And just
Hmm.
circle them around and write down like how you feel when you're around them. But
Hmm.
then also circle the ones who make you feel happy, who make you feel safe.
Yeah,
And then I would start speaking your truth. Now, speaking your truth, it's natural you're going to get angry because it's years of repressed anger inside where we have been people pleasing for so long. But the more you start saying no to things you don't want to do and yes to things you want to do, the easier it'll get. Like,
sure.
I don't know for yourself as well, Raj, but the moment I said no, I remember I was like shaking. I was like, no. And it was like a big moment in my life because I didn't know how to say no before.
Hmm.
But the moment I said no, it got easier and easier every time I did it. And it's just easier now. Third thing I would say is forgive yourself. We all have some form of trauma or something in our life. And,
Everyone.
you know, yeah, exactly. Whether it's big, whether it's small,
Yeah.
like forgiving yourself will set you free. That was one of the biggest things for me was that the moment I forgave myself, it didn't matter what anyone else had done to me.
Hmm.
The moment I forgave myself, I was able to forgive them and move forward in my life.
Hmm.
And I found that that was what changed my life around because I didn't know how to forgive people. Back then, I was like,
Hmm.
how dare they treat me this way? Why are they
Yeah.
treating me this way? But the moment you forgive, you allow yourself to trust your inner wisdom. And then you can start going on this journey of finding things that light you up. That's the next thing I would say. Find things that give you joy, whether that's like skipping, whether running, whatever you
Hmm.
did, even when you were growing up, do some of the things that you enjoy. If you've
Hmm.
always wanted to paint, go paint. If you always wanted to learn a new skill, you go do
Hmm.
that because that will bring in your inner wisdom and that will bring in this whole new like creative energy
Sure.
and just trusting your inner
Yeah.
wisdom. And number five, I would say that seek help if you
Hmm.
need it. Because even if it's not you even speaking to a therapist, it's always great to speak to a therapist or a coach or somebody who can understand you, but find somebody who understands you,
Hmm.
not somebody that's going to make you feel worse after, because there's
Yeah.
plenty of people, therapists and coaches, who have so much trauma and they inflict it onto their clients. So look into people that are going to make you feel safe and
Hmm.
understood. And I would say look into empaths. There's so many of us out there who are doing
Yeah.
this amazing work, like Raj as well. Like, you're doing amazing work and I
Thank you.
love what you're doing. And like, there's so many other empaths like who are ready to
Yeah.
empower you, who've been through similar experiences, maybe not to the same extent or
Hmm.
maybe to extreme extents, but they can help to guide you to really get on a path of inner wisdom and just trusting your own inner light. Because at the end of the day, you have these amazing gifts, dear empaths, and you just
Yeah.
need to go out there and share it and ignore what other people have to think, because whether you're doing good or bad, somebody's going to hate you. That's one of my
Yeah.
lessons I've learned over the years.
Yeah. If you don't have haters, you're not doing it right. And I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
going to get a lot of hate from this episode, but I'm okay with that.
It's all good. It's all love. It's all love here.
Yeah. And all you guys that are listening in this episode, if you can share this with somebody, I'm sure there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people out there that could benefit from this conversation, because you guys are not alone. And it could be anybody. You don't have to be in a certain culture or whatnot. Trauma is trauma, there's no face to it.
100%. Yeah. Thank you, Raj, for just having me on here,
Yeah.
and just thank you for you bringing out your inner light, because we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if you didn't
Yeah.
trust that journey.
Well, I'll tell you, I've had almost 100 episodes, and I've never really really explained what behind the scenes of my full trauma. But I feel like this episode kind of brought that out of me. Like, I just wanted to just send it out, and that's why I felt like this is going to be a good episode, because you're coming from the same culture as me. You will understand. It's been so frustrating that if you go to a friend that maybe just been born and brought up here in the States,
Mhm.
it's just not, they're not going to get it.
Yeah.
I've tried many times. They're just like, dude, man, why don't you just like do this, man? And I'm like, it doesn't work. You can't have a one-on-one conversation when somebody's already thinking that you're a property. You're like equivalent to a field mouse, like you're
Mm.
you're like equal to that. So how are you gonna change? You can't change anybody. So I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm not gonna try to change anybody. And that's one lesson
Mm.
that I've learned, and that's what I tell a lot of my clients is, don't try to change anybody. Change your response and how you react to these types of situations. Because now you've explained, like, you going to these places and people are coming up to you and asking you like personal stuff. I don't even put myself in that position in the first place. I just don't go. I go to places where I know where I'm going to have like-minded people, empaths, highly sensitive people that are not going to judge me by my skin tone or what I drive or how much money I have in the bank. These are authentic people, and it's so hard to find nowadays in
Mm.
2021. And so I wanted to create this podcast to create one place where anyone could come in and just say, "Hey, take me as I am." And that's why I believe that
Mm.
this podcast is done well. And and I love having people like you on here, and you're doing amazing work yourself.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. We're all, this empath community is growing. I
Yeah.
remember when I first realized as empath back in, gosh, I think it was 2017 after my operation. And I saw the term empath. I cried, Raj,
Hmm.
even though I've done so much clearing in my life. Like, I cried because it was the first time I felt understood.
Yeah.
And, I looked up other empaths. I was like wanting to connect with
Hmm.
them. And, all of us, we're a small community, but we're
Hmm.
growing. And I
Well,
think
yeah.
we're going to be the ones that are able to help other empaths who have been so
Yeah.
afraid of thinking there's something wrong with them,
Hmm.
reminding them that actually there's so much right about them.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're all human, guys. We all want to be heard. We all have
Yeah.
feelings, and hopefully, in after all this thing is over with the pandemic, the world will start to realize that there are good people out there, and this is, I'm kind of glad the pandemic happened, because there would be no on-call empath, because I wanted to start some movement, and I started it right before the pandemic, and this podcast would not be born if it wasn't for something that drastic to happen. That we're probably not going to see anything that crazy in our lifetimes, but that it took something like that disaster to come out at the very end with something productive and helpful to help millions of, not millions, but like thousands of people.
It's getting there. It's
Yeah,
getting there. So
my
yeah,
goal is millions.
yeah, it's coming. Oh,
We'll
bless
see.
you.
So before we take off, can you just tell us where we can find you? Like, just tell my listeners like what your social media handles are.
Sure. So on Instagram, I am Gurds. So that's IAMGURDS. You can find me on Gurds Hundle. So Hundle is HUNDAL. Hotmail. Oh, sorry. Hotmail. I don't know what happened there. www.gurdshundle.com. To be honest, if you just type in my name, Gurds Hundle, on
Right.
Google, it comes up with like one of my books years ago written, the podcast, The Inner Light Project, which is my podcast on iTunes. You'll be able to find me everywhere. And even on Facebook, it's just my name. I'm everywhere. Yeah.
Well, I definitely want you back in the future, and I have some big plans coming up with the On-Call Empath, with bringing coaches from all around the world, all in under the On-Call Empath. So I would be honored to have you come back if you're willing to.
I'll be delighted. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys, I hope you got something out of this episode. I certainly did. Feel free to reach out to me or Gurds. I'll leave everything in the comments below. But in the meantime, please share this episode with anyone that might be going through something similar. And it would really make my day if you can give me a review and let me know how I'm doing. With that said, you guys are never alone. We are out.